everybody, this is John. Thanks for joining me today. This is going to be my first video in my leathercraft series, and today we will be making a belt. Usually I use two pieces of leather when I make my belts. I'll use a 5 ounce and another 5 ounce piece of leather, and then I will mate them together. But this particular belt is actually a 5 ounce and a 3 ounce piece of leather. It'll be a little bit softer than the other belts would be, a little more comfortable on the waist. And right here, gluing the pieces together. I like to use Elmer's glue. It's not as harsh to breathe in a confined space as like liquid cement or something like that would be. And as you're doing this process, the glue dries pretty quick, so you got to get the stuff put together before the glue dries. And then I'll use paper clips or small clamps to clamp everything together as the glue is drying. Some of the aspects of this video will be sped up just to save you guys a little bit of the time. Now that everything is glued and the glue's dried, I can pull all the clamps off. And what I'm doing here, this is a specialized tool for making a notch in the leather, and that notch is what I will follow as I'm stamping it out to be sewn together. It looks good aesthetically, as well as it's a very functional tool to have. And then here I'm getting ready to start stamping out, or punching holes I should say. I use chisels and then a polyurethane hammer. The reason we use a polyurethane hammer as opposed to a regular metal hammer is most of the tooling is made out of metal, and metal on metal contact makes your tools wear out a lot quicker than what a polyurethane hammer would do. A lot of guys like to use rawhide too, but rawhide hammers are super expensive compared to what a polyurethane hammer is. And the chisels I got right here are Craft Tool or Craft Pro brand from Tandy Leather. And this is how you prepare the belt to be sewn together by hand. And then here, this is a wool dauber, and it's actually made out of sheep's wool. What I'm doing is using the lighter to burn off the small little fuzzies that are on it, and that keeps the dye from laying down as good. And that's the dye I usually use, is a Leathercraft brand dye, made by Fiebings or Fleeblings, however you want to say it. This belt is going to be a dark brown when it's all said and done. And when you're applying the dye, you usually apply it in long, even strokes. It gives the leather a more uniform look when it's all said and done. If you have a lower quality dye, sometimes if you don't do the long, even strokes, you can actually see the stroke marks on the leather, and it makes it look not as professional. And it usually takes a couple coats to get everything covered up, because just like staining wood, the leather soaks up the dye, and then you have to keep reapplying until it stops soaking up the dye and it actually shows the solid uniform color that you're looking for. And there is the dyed product. And what I'm doing here is a tool called an edge beveler. And basically what this tool does is it trims off the sharp corner of the leather, makes the product look more professional, more complete when it's all said and done. And then here is the sewing process or stitching, depending on who you're talking to. The type of stitch that I'm doing here is called a saddle stitch. Basically, you take one long piece of thread, and I use wax covered nylon thread, and you put a needle at each end of it, and you alternate shoving the needles through the same hole, and that basically creates a small lock in between each hole. That way, if the thread was to get cut or wear out, it would not fray like a stitch from a sewing machine would. It would be condensed to just that one small area. And sewing by hand takes a really long time to do. And then here I'm using a drill bit to cut the holes for the belt buckle itself. Usually I would use stamps or a leather punch, but I wanted to try a drill bit this time. I've seen where guys will actually use a drill press to do it, and I didn't really like the way this turned out because it kind of frayed the holes out a little bit as opposed to a leather punch, but I broke my leather punch, so drill bit it is for now. And what I'm doing here is called burnishing or brandishing the edge of the leather. Basically, you take a piece of wood and I'll put some beeswax on the corner of the leather too, and then I use a piece of wood, and all it does is it smooths the edges down, gives it a more professional, complete look. It keeps it from fraying out. And then here is the finished product, um, ready to be packaged up and shipped out.